Mount Pacifico Campground is probably considered one of Southern California's most hidden gems. I probably did this around 3 years ago, and it was my first off road trip I've ever been in. This was around 2021, and I did it in my ex's Pathfinder. And this was a non modified vehicle from around the year 2004, 2005, and it was rear wheel drive. Little did I know that I would eventually get a four-wheel drive 4Runner and do some pretty nifty mods over the years. That being said, you can see that to get around most scenic off-road places in Southern California, you really don't need an off-road vehicle. Any place that you can't get through with a, four-wheel drive beefed up vehicle is probably going to involve rock crawling, and the end destination is not going to be really pretty. So if you're just interested in getting to some really cool sightseeing spots, you're fine with the rear wheel drive SUV. We only got stuck once, and that was because we moved all the way to the right to a ditch to let a third gen 4Runner pass by, and that caused us to get stuck. And the gentleman was nice enough to offer to tow us out, and he drove backward in that old third gen up that narrow path going 30 plus miles per hour. And that's when I knew 4Runners were total beasts when it came to off-road, and not necessarily rock crawling, but just trailblazing. And then before he rescued us, we were actually able to eventually get traction and get out ourselves. But if you do any sort of fire trail or off-road trail during the summer in SoCal, you really should be fine with rear-wheel drive. And then again, this is Mount Pacifico Campground. It's open seasonally. On the way, we did see some officers or park rangers. They did ask if we were hunters. I think they were just checking permits and things like that. But, we let them know we were just sightseeing. Other than that, just reading some information off their website. They do say, there are bears in the area. So, always carry bear spray, and, I even carry some when I walk my dog. Sometimes Amazon won't let you ship to SoCal just because of the, policies that, communist California has. But if you do get your hands on it, just know it's not illegal to carry around. You can't get a ticket for it. It's illegal to use on people, but it's not illegal to carry. Okay, so just reading from the Forest Service website, it's located near the western boundary of San Gabriel Mountains National Monument. It's accessed by driving 3N17 Road from Mill Creek Summit. And then again, that eventually leads you to Mount Pacifico Campground. Make sure to check that it's not closed before you go. And after researching it, if you take the right path going back down, you can also end up on Little Rock and Little Rock Creek right by Palmdale. So you have an option to do that as well. When you get to the top, there is tent camping, camping trailers, picnic tables, toilets, and parking. That day I did get there. Basically every spot was taken up. It does say you need the Adventure Pass or 30-year pass, but I'm sure you can also use the America the Beautiful. There is one vault toilet. And again, generally a really nice place. There are 8 single sites. There is a picnic table, very scenic. You can see the mountains all the way up from there. I definitely recommend this place, though generally if you're coming from LA, let's say Long Beach or Paramount, it is going to take you like 2 hours and 45 minutes, almost 3 hours to an hour and a half, which is about the same length you would spend if you were going to Idlewild or anywhere in the San Bernardino forest, or, even Big Bear might come out closer. But regardless, it was very enjoyable. This will always hold a place in my heart. God willing, I'm hoping I don't stay in California all my life. It's expensive to live here. I like the nice, fresh, clean biomes in the Pacific Northwest, but Idaho, Colorado Springs, all those places are nice for the outdoor folks. So, um, right now, this was filmed on an old phone, on an old truck, but once I get some time, I plan to start filming content too, and just exposing some of these sites. I know there's a lot of, what do you call it? There's a lot of gatekeeping when it comes to hiking, camping, and off road trucks. And for one, I sort of get why Azusa River too used to be known maybe 30, 40 years ago, just by what I can gather on the internet. It used to be really clean and nice, and the culture changes over the years, and things are a lot dirtier than they were before. I remember my first time going to Azusa, I never wanted to go back because there's trash everywhere. People aren't the nicest, things like that, which is why I generally like trails like this. Up at top, there were mostly hunters, but the people you'll see here are more enthusiasts. So, if you don't like going to hikes close to Pasadena or LA, where you encounter a lot of your, LA mall crawler type of people with, loud music and, smoking and, all that jazz. You kind of want to get away from it. If you go through these spots again, typically most people who are very casual won't make a 2.5 hour drive to 3 hour drive to get to these places, which is why I am doing a short mini series of just pointing out some of the best off-road places in SoCal locally, because again, eventually people will find out, and we live in the age of the internet, and if you really don't like California, you have the finances to do so, you should move out. That is my plan. But while I'm here, these are one of the places I like to go to just enjoy the city. Generally pretty chill. I also did more research and found out there are some nice trails you can go by, but as California is, there's not a lot of shade, so make sure to bring sunscreen, bring pepper spray, bring bug spray, things like that too. Always bring extra water, always. Gas is optional, but not really in LA, just because gas is usually so accessible right before you go off any off-road trail. And then if this is your first time off-roading, just know that if you're looking at the miles per gallon or your estimated range, especially on older trucks, when you deflate your tires, which is usually recommended around 18 psi, which is a safe number if you're not sure what to put, that estimate is going to tank and it's not accurate. I know that happened when I went off-roading a few years back with my ex, and we were, I think it's called Holcomb, or not Honeycomb, Holcomb Valley by Big Bear. And we saw a big Jeep just flipped over. Their axles tend to break a lot. Um, no, I don't make fun of Jeeps. I'm jealous. I'm sure I'd have one too if I had the money. But I do see a lot of them flipped over, and big trucks too. Part of that is, LA people just not knowing how to drive. Um, but the axles are a known issue with Jeeps. And this was late at night. It was snowing. It was starting to freeze. Even though it was in my 4Runner, we really couldn't get around because it was blocking most of the road, and there was a risk we would tip over um, if we went around. And we actually could have gone the long way, but I was still relatively new to off-roading, and I looked at my range, and even though I had filled up gas before going up, I saw that it said I had like 30 miles left, and I freaked out. So, we kind of pushed our luck, and we were able to get around the Jeep. But then there was this other gentleman with a really old lifted truck, which I now know big lifts are a no-no, especially with rock crawling and things like that. It causes you to tip over. A safe lift would be, 2.5 to 3 inches max. You don't really want to go over that because then you have to revamp a lot of suspension thing, and then you're just dumping a lot of money. But big wheels do help, and that's why Jeeps really do shine in that at stock without modifications. They don't really need a lift most of the time, just because the wheels help with that as well. I decided to keep my Forerunner stock just because, most of these trips that you take, you're on the road for like, a couple 100 miles or whatever, 70. And that's just a big hit to gas mileage. And so far, I haven't found anything I've wanted to get through that I haven't been able to. I even managed to do, I think it's called John Bull by Big Bear, which is considered really dangerous, and people break their trucks there all the time. I went in there by accident and I managed to get so far in that I almost couldn't get back out. That was one of the few times I felt like I was actually gonna tip. Um, but other than that, it wasn't really offering anything you couldn't see, taking the more beaten path. And um, usually with most off-road trails too, there's gonna be a really easy path to go through, and then some jacked up path that people use as a challenge. So again, if you're someone who's looking into overlanding or just the off-road scene, just because you're an avid hiker, you like photography, which is kind of what I'm getting into, I kind of really like it, and you just want to get some really nice shots and things like that, you really don't need it's good to have 4x4 just for peace of mind, but you're not really going to need to rock crawl or go over things like that. I feel that's more if you live in the Midwest or, Pacific Northwest, where you live out in the middle of nowhere, you have to go through dirt roads, then yeah, all those goodies are nice. But if you're just a chill person, just slap on some all-terrain tires on your, truck or SUV, and you're good. You can do all of this and more. If anything, I sometimes see sedans and other mid-sized cars go through here, but I don't recommend it because the suspension does get beat up, and especially if you're driving through a lot of mini pebbles, mini rocks, almost like sand, right between pebbles and sand, whatever that's called. Sometimes if you're driving a sedan, that will also get lodged between your serpentine belts, and I actually have a video on that when I went out to a trip to some springs in LA, say LA, SoCal, but with a friend, and they didn't tell me that I'd have to be taking my sedan through this really bumpy road, and things like that really do mess up your suspension. So that's one thing to keep in mind. But generally speaking, as long as you take your time and you're not driving through those roads with rivets, which the one on screen right now, this trail doesn't. It's mostly like a sandy, and it does get muddy and wet and things during the winter. But overall, this was a great experience, and once I'm done completely working on my Forerunner, it's about 3 years later. I've been doing small mods through it throughout the year. I plan to come back here and do some kind of cinematic mod. Um, and yeah, I'm just gonna give out a list of some really cool places that I've gone off-roading since then. And this is pretty much the trail that started it all, and it's still pretty much one of the nicest ones. So if this doesn't look nice to you, this is more or less the best SoCal has to offer. You do have to remember, we do live in a desert, and right before my recording time runs out, I am going to list just a few more. So there's Black Truck Trail or Black Mountain Trail. I forgot, that one's in Idlewild. That one is the really big one. You can do like so many trails there. You could spend days there. Not to be confused with the other Black Truck Trail, which is in San Diego. That one is a little drier. And then there's also Coldwater Creek Canyon or Little Creek Canyon, something like that as well.